our Envision Beyond interview series. My name is Grace Galdos, and I am leading the Global Sustainability Lab of the Intelligent Enterprise Institute. Today, we are honored to have Carsten Borchers with us. Carsten is Vice President of Global Green Gas and Hydrogen Projects at E.oN. We will be talking about business networks and how this can help to accelerate the energy transition. We will also discuss the projects E.oN is involved to build up a value chain for green hydrogen. Hi, Carsten. It is great to have you here with us today.
Hi, Grace. It's a pleasure to be here.
Could you please tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, of course. I'm a computer scientist by training, actually, which connects me to SAP as well. Never worked for SAP, but started my career was in the digital world, and then after a while did a PhD in economics, and then had a couple of years in strategy consulting with the Boston Consulting Group. And from there moved on after a couple of years to what was at that time called Germanischer Lloyd, DNV now, or DNV, which is a technical certification and advisory company. In my last position there, was leading for 4 years a software company within the US. So you notice no hydrogen up to that point, actually. And in that software company, we were producing predictive maintenance, power system planning software for bigger utilities, especially the electric part, actually. And that brought me to E.oN. And in E.oN, I had for 4 years, I was responsible for strategy and grid strategy in particular. And in that time, I proved for the first 3 years that hydrogen doesn't make sense. And then when I actually learned that some of my arguments were rather weak, I realized that hydrogen does make sense, and now moved actually to the hydrogen business after a very intensive phase of, from a strategic perspective, working on hydrogen, and responsible for the global projects, including the CEO Alliance that we will talk about later in the hydrogen organization. I'm also we founded a new business, actually, and I'm together with Gabriel Clemens, one of the managing directors of that newly founded company.
Thanks, Carsten. It sounds like a very impressive curriculum you have. Now, let's move to the question we have prepared for this interview. And you already mentioned it. Business networks can help organizations accelerate their energy transition efforts. One example of this business network is the CEO Alliance. Can you please tell us what is the CEO Alliance and what are the aims of this business network?
So the CEO Alliance is basically an alliance of CEOs, as the name suggests, of leading European companies. We have SAP as an example. We have E.oN as another one. Volkswagen initiated this alliance. We have Scania, the big truck manufacturer, but also UniCredit as a financial institution. Schneider Electric from another different industry and also geography is within that alliance. The purpose of the alliance is basically to help European recovery after COVID. It was founded after the COVID crisis in the maybe darkest moment of the crisis, or one of the darkest moments, when the need became obvious to restart after we have the opportunity to shape Europe again, and do that in a positive way, in a sustainable way. And in that sense, the companies came together also to give some advice to the governments in which direction to smartly invest the huge funding programs that were at that time in debate, not to profit ourselves, but to make sure that we are doing the right thing, that we are building Europe better in a very strong way. The network is very, very important, because if we speak about something like building a sustainable Europe, it's a little bit like discovering a uncharted continent or new territory. You just need to learn about it. We know in principle how it works, because we have a lot of smart analytics and smart studies and concepts. But the reality shows that there are sometimes boundary constraints, And to get over them, and we will talk about the hydrogen value chain as one of the challenges, actually, to build that up, to overcome them, it takes more than just one player. We need to act together. And therefore, the network is a very, very powerful instrument. We can only be successful if we work together.
That's true. And what you mentioned, the aims of this CEO Alliance is to build a more sustainable Europe. But I think the world will benefit from this as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a little bit funny discussion sometimes that it was in Germany, obviously, as you can hear, I'm German, but we are very often debating that we can't change the world to a better place by just changing Germany and getting rid of greenhouse gas emissions in Germany. Because China, for example, is building a lot of coal plants or gas plants, actually, while we close them. I think the opposite is true. I myself worked in the US, as I mentioned, when I was leading the software company in the electricity space. And what I saw at that time was that the government at that time, the Donald Trump government, tried to bring back coal. And it was so incredibly difficult because renewables found their way into the electricity system by playing down the learning curve. So what we can do is we can show and pioneer a way that just by being the better way, not using energy more efficiently and having a much more attractive energy value chain built up, also for all players in the value chain, we can lead the way. And therefore, it's really important that we are changing not only Europe by doing that. We need to start small and realistic, but it is something that will have a bigger impact.
Mm-hmm. I would say leading by example, right?
Yes, that's well said.
Yes. Now, could you please also explain some of the latest initiatives and projects of the CEO Alliance?
Yeah, the CEO Alliance spans, I didn't mention so far, Enel and Iberdrola are in the alliance as well. And when we're talking about sustainability, it's of course the intersection between economy and energy system that plays a major role. So a lot of the projects are looking at that intersection. It's about sustainable buildings, for example, how buildings can be made for the future in a much better way. It's about infrastructure like e-buses and public transportation, for example, which is another project. It is also about strengthening the connection between the different energy systems, which is a project. It's about charging infrastructure for heavy goods and light goods vehicles. So it is actually a very, very broad range that's covered. I mean, the participants are very powerful companies, but nobody is powerful enough to bring this to life. And therefore, it's important to address these topics together.
Yeah, I think it's a topic that is impacting different industries. So that's why the players should be represented, these different industries, these different topics.
Yes, and it's not exclusive. I mean, we have, I mentioned Schneider Electric, we have ABB there as well. And also from the energy space, you know that it's that's different players that could be competitors, but act together, not in a way to exclude others. It's more like an alliance, as the name suggests.
Thank you. And could you please tell us how E.oN is involved in these projects and with who you collaborate?
Yeah, we are involved in the sustainable buildings part, for example, because we do smart solutions for buildings like heating, cooling solutions, very energy efficient solutions, for example. We are involved in the connecting the energy systems because with our grids, we are, of course, an essential component of the energy system. We are also involved in other infrastructure projects like charging and so on. But we are only leading the hydrogen value chain as a project.
And can you tell us a little bit more about your collaboration with Enel and Iberdrola?
Yeah, well, we set a hydrogen value chain. A starting point was to look at the current energy system and think about tangible next steps. And the current system is in a way, and it will most likely be for a very long time, maybe forever in this way, that we have regions within Europe that require a lot of energy. those areas where we have heavy industry, for example. Typically in those regions where we had energy, a lot of energy before, coal areas, for example. And these regions have a very high density of demand. And we have other regions, and this is not co-located in future anymore, which are providing a lot of renewables and a lot of our future energy. So there are actually two ways. One, bring the energy to the industry, or two, to bring the industry to the energy. One project, H2 Green Steel, is supporting, is looking at building steel plants in Spain, for example, which is bringing the industry to the energy. But what we also have is industry that's for good reasons in a specific location and is not capable, or we don't want it to move it. It's because it requires certain capabilities and an ecosystem around it, meanwhile, because it's a very knowledge intensive industry, for example, that you can't just replicate. And in these cases, we need to bring the energy there. And we looked at various ways of doing that. And in that project on the green hydrogen value chain, we are pursuing two paths. One is to provide electricity from places where we have significantly more wind and sun. We looked at Italy and Spain, and strengthen the electricity grid and build then an electrolyzer on site with our customers. It's one part of the project. The other one is to look at options how we can move molecules. Those of you that looked at hydrogen already know how difficult it is to move hydrogen. If you have a pipe, it's easy, but everything else is really, really difficult. It has a significant volume. You need to compress it very much to liquid, then to move it, which is then coming at very low temperatures, below 250 degrees. So we are looking at ammonia, long story short, as a product that is resulting from producing green hydrogen by adding nitrogen to it and bringing that from Iberdrola, from Spain, via ship to harbors, the Netherlands, and then convert it back into hydrogen. The term is cracking, basically. So we are cracking it back into hydrogen and releasing nitrogen to the atmosphere, which is not a greenhouse gas and neutral with regard to the environmental impact.
Yeah, thank you. And this already answers our next question. How does hydrogen help the energy transition to zero emissions next to renewables?
It partly answers that, because we have not looked at how much hydrogen is actually needed, because helping to do the energy transition means it has a significant impact. And the analysis we did together with our colleagues as well is looking at hard to abate sectors, so very heavy industry actually, where you need a lot of energy, very high temperatures, but it can also be for mobility. We are working with a truck manufacturer to supply the heavy duty vehicles with hydrogen. So it is a substantial part. Studies suggest between 20% of the energy system in the UK, now up to 30% was the latest strategy released last year. I think we will see a significant impact of that in the future.
And talking about energy in intensive industries, we also heard about the rising demand for green ammonia. In that context, could you tell us how green hydrogen and green ammonia are related?
Yes. When we're looking at green hydrogen is produced by using electricity from renewables, so hydropower, predominantly wind and solar, and then cutting the water molecule, which consists of hydrogen and oxygen, H2O, into hydrogen and oxygen, using that electricity and so-called electrolyzers. The oxygen is either used for industrial purposes or released to the atmosphere, and then we have the hydrogen. But the hydrogen, as I mentioned earlier, is really difficult to move, and therefore one solution is to process it to the next kind of molecule, which can be ammonia, and ammonia is NH3. So it is something that is using nitrogen from the atmosphere to create the molecule, and that is much easier to transport. We have a global ammonia value chain established already. It's a commodity that's traded and moved around the globe already. So it is something that sets up on existing technology. And then you can use the NH3 and cut it back into hydrogen at the point of use. that is is one part of the project that we are looking at. So ammonia is a very likely candidate as a kind of energy vector, so as a way to transport it from A to B.
Thanks for your answer, Carsten. And now we have learned a lot about hydrogen. And as far as we understand, producing green hydrogen still needs to further develop, right, at the industrial scale. What is your guess? When will green hydrogen be produced at attractive prices?
I mentioned I was in strategy before, and we had a colleague who was given the task a long time ago to predict the same answer for PV. And by the time he concluded his extensive analysis, coming up with an answer, the actual price for PV cells in the market was already under his prediction for 2030. So it's really, really looking into the crystal ball to answer that question. But I think what we can answer to approach it with a little bit more serious approach is we know that hydrogen sees different learning curves. Learning curves are a very good way to explain how by increasing the number of units you produce, the cost goes down. We see that when we saw that with computer chips, for example. Moore's law is showing how chips become more powerful, and also we can see they are becoming more cheap, more affordable. These learning curves, we see at least 4 different within the chain of green hydrogen. We see the first one for renewables. We saw that already, that renewables are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Green electricity is one major cost component for green hydrogen as well. So that is one. The next one is the technology of electrolyzers. We have membranes in there, which are separating then the hydrogen from the oxygen. That's one of the core knowledge pieces. There we expect a exponential learning curve as well. And then we have the size of the installment. We have lab scale electrolyzers at the moment, but we are looking at 10, 100, maybe much more megawatts of electrolyzer size, which is making it cheaper as well. And then last but not least, the electrolyzers are manufactured today, if you're going to the big manufacturers, in a workshop style. People are coming with their tools and screwdrivers and manufacturing them. If you think about like a car manufacturing process where you have really industrialized processes, the cost will go down significantly as well. So we know by looking at these 4 learning curves that cost will come down substantially. And then depending on how you adjust the factors, you end some late 20s, early 30s with something that is really an attractive hydrogen price that creates a breakthrough, at least in a couple of market segments.
Yeah, and I also heard that some countries are already developing an hydrogen strategy, right? Like in Asia.
Yes. Because the beauty of hydrogen is the more you use it, the better it becomes, because it is something that is not consuming rare products like batteries, for example, do. It's water predominantly. And of course, water supply in some regions is really difficult. But if you're looking at using ocean water, we have that in excess, and also green electricity is available in excess. So what we then achieve is that we, for all, and you were asking the very good question, is it just Europe or the world? The more we are looking at driving down the cost, the more we are helping countries where energy is not as affordable as we see it at the moment to also participate. And so the price goes down by the more people use it, basically. So it is something we sometimes refer to the champagne versus table water discussion, whether hydrogen is the champagne of the energy transition. I don't buy into that, because I see we want to make an impact globally, and then we need to make it table water so that we all can afford it and use it, basically. And the other good aspect is that, especially which we initially didn't really reflect on, but we're now looking at the Russian war on the Ukraine, we are seeing that supply chains can be really, really dangerous if you don't have alternatives. And the hydrogen supply chain is a very democratic one, if you want to say it that way, because it invites everybody who has sun and wind and water to participate. And those countries are much more than the countries we initially are looking at for the fossil supply. So we have big regions in South America. We have regions in Africa, Namibia. We have in Australia, also in Russia and in Ukraine, we have a lot of wind or comparable nice availability of wind. Actually, we have Scotland, Norway. We have Northern America with very sweet spots. So it is something where more people can benefit actually from producing that energy.
Yes, and I love the idea that these new developments can allow us to have less dependency, for example, from the energy in other countries. And also, I love the idea that less privileged regions like Africa, this can be a source of development, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's also providing job opportunities. It's a new, more democratic. It's, of course, you have places where it's difficult to develop, but it's at least inviting more countries compared to today to participate in that value chain.
Great developments for the world, indeed, that are affecting not only the energy transition, but also, let's say, how this can affect in a positive way people's lives. Regarding the pathways to build up a green hydrogen value chain, in how far does E.oN support its customers on the way to clean energy?
It's our purpose and reason to exist to do that. We are having two major parts of our business. We have the infrastructure business, which is, of course, the platform to exchange energy. And we have the business of working with our customers, with the energy infrastructure solutions business, or it's classical B2B business if you want to, and B2C, to help customers to become prosumers, to participate, to also generate energy themselves with rooftop PV, for example, to store it, to sell it, to use it efficiently. We have solutions along the entire spectrum of energy vectors. So mostly electricity, but also gas heat installations using waste heat, for example, for buildings. So it's in our DNA to make our customers succeed in the energy transition, not just perform the energy transition, but come out stronger. That's our purpose.
Yes, you are providing all these, let's say, possibilities to enable your customers. And the question will be, why do they need to take action now?
There are different levels that are affecting our customers. Some time ago, we were still debating whether the energy transition would be something really important, or whether we would just accept going to 2 degrees plus or more. These days are over. We are seeing that we as a society, and it's not just individual players, but it's the society moving, and that is because we are all depending on each other. It's a movement that is not that's not going back. We are seeing courts taking decisions, forcing companies to have a certain share of their revenue coming from green energy. We have the right of living in a healthy environment in future as a highest court ruling in Germany. We have a movement with sustainability in significant parts of the society becomes a really important driver. And then we see that companies are responding to that. We have some of our customers have supply chain requirements where they need, in order to be in business in future, to provide green products. They are forced to green their products. And so it's not just conviction, it is the ability to participate in future life for some of the players. And that is driving also financing. Green financing is another aspect. So it's a movement that we can't as individuals pull out of. Mm-hmm. And then I was speaking about the learning curve. It is also a smart way. It can be a cheaper way in future. Energy efficiency, for example, is something, if you don't use energy, it's really smart because you are not wasting any money, because you don't have to pay for that energy. So it's not something that is a belief. It's also an economic imperative at some point in time. And so all this coming together, I think it is really, really creating an urgency. And if we are now looking at the transition periods, every individual, every customer, you and I, for gas heating at home, what's the depreciation period for a gas boiler? And when do we need to take the next investment decision? And if we then think about the time horizon we have ahead of us, 2030 as a really important point in time when CO2 will become even more expensive and the whole way of using fossil becomes more difficult. We need to act now.
Would you share some insights on the challenges of the pathway to net zero? Because you have been very clear, why do we need to act now? But which will be the challenges your customers might find on their way?
Yeah, we've seen, I mean, the obvious one is green alternatives are available. They are sometimes more expensive at the moment. And that's for the reason I described with learning curves, for example, in some technologies. So price is obviously a reason why many people are seeing difficulties at the moment. Subsidies, public funding that's available is bridging the gap to a certain level. We are seeing that these tools are in development at the moment, and I think more or less we are doing a good job there. Sometimes we as Europeans have a tendency to make stuff a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, a little bit more formal than it needs to be. The examples from the US was the Inflation Reduction Act, which is just providing a tax subsidy for green hydrogen, which is really substantial, is an example where you can make it a little easier. We would have, as Europeans, we would have the feeling that we are supporting applications where we don't want to see green hydrogen or something like that. So we have doubts whether it's the right approach in every place, but having something simple helps a lot because it helps everybody in the market to use it. If it's really complicated, it's getting difficult. So one thing is bridging the price gap, which is a major challenge. And then we have, of course, availability of technology in some places.
What are the business opportunities for E.oN green gas projects in short and long term?
Yeah, the business opportunities are very much to complement our portfolio of solutions for our customers with another component. In other words, if you have a private home, you have a certain portfolio of applications that we are offering to decarbonize your living. For an industrial customer, it's the same. If you're a mid-sized company, for example, today we are typically providing electricity, the grid connection. We are providing gas, maybe also the grid connection there. We are providing a heating solution. We are providing mobility solutions for charging. But it can be complemented today already with an electrolyzer, for example, which can then produce hydrogen for mobility and also production purposes, for example. But maybe we see a gas grid connection that's bringing hydrogen in future that we can offer, where we can offer the grid connection and also the hydrogen supply. So what we want to do is we want to have a comprehensive package of solutions to our customers to really first understand what the challenges are and then tailor-made provide the right solution for the future energy world. And hydrogen is a puzzle piece in that. And we'll see how big that puzzle piece will be. The electricity piece will be really big, but the hydrogen piece will also be substantial, I think.
And what are the plans of E.oN to extend this collaboration outside Europe?
Yeah, I think we need to. It is becoming a global system. The world is a very well-connected place, very dynamic, and there, as we elaborated earlier, huge opportunities for other places in Africa and in South America, for example. We must collaborate. Us enabling them is the precondition for them helping us again, and so it's bilateral trade is really kind of very important piece in our own interest, but also in the interest of our partners.
Thank you very much, Carsten, for joining us today and sharing your valuable insights. Personally, I have learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience will appreciate everything you have shared with us.
Thank you, Grace. It was really a pleasure.
Thank all of you for listening to our conversation with Carsten Borchers on green hydrogen as prerequisite to decarbonize energy and intensive industries. We hope to meet you again in the other episodes of our Ambition Beyond interview series. Goodbye.